Hi, this is Piers for Programming Duck, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to learn about web accessibility. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer for legal purposes. I'm not a lawyer. This article only represents my personal opinion and current understanding. It's not legal advice. Please consult a lawyer for information on the legal aspects of accessibility. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get started. So first of all, one of the prerequisites to accessibility is semantic HTML. That is something that you must know as a developer anyway, as someone who works on the front end. It's one of your duties. It's one of the reasons why you're hired, and it's a basic description of your job. You must know how to write semantic HTML. So that is the first thing. Before you even touch anything else about accessibility, make sure you know how to write good semantic HTML. Okay, so I don't have any specific recommendations for that because, but this isn't a course on how to learn web development. Like in general, this is on how to learn web accessibility. But regardless, any good tutorial will do. The web.dev resources tend to be pretty good. I think those are the ones that are written by Google, and also MDN. MDN has amazing tutorials on HTML, and it has the references, right? It has the reference for the elements and for the attributes and for whatever it is. So one thing that I do, if I've forgotten how an element works, because let's be honest, you don't use every single element in HTML all the time, is I just go on the MDN page, I type the element that I think I'm trying to look at, and I read the page. And the pages are usually extremely thorough, and they tell you how they work. And they also usually have accessibility hints on the MDN website. And another thing that I do often is I open up the MDN HTML elements reference page, which lists all the elements, and you can literally read through that page in like 3 to 5 minutes, so every few weeks, every few months or something, or whenever I want an element, but I don't quite remember, I look at that page, I scan it, and that's basically how I make sure I write semantic HTML. The second thing, as with anything, is testing and practice. Programming is a skill. It's something that you must do. You must physically practice. You can't just read a book and you're now an amazing programmer. You have to practice a lot. Accessibility is, of course, the same way. And testing is another flavor of that. And testing is also something you would do in your work to test that your website is accessible. You must test it, same as you test any other work you do. So what do you do here? Well, basically, when it comes to accessibility, one of the ways that you practice is by using the website as though you were a person with a particular disability. So for example, try using only the keyboard for website navigation, which many people, for example, people with visual disabilities or motor disabilities, they can't use their arms as well. They can't use the mouse. They have to use the keyboard. So try it, try using your website with only using the keyboard and only that, and see how it is. And this experience will also help you, it will help you significantly in accessibility, because first of all, you understand how it works to navigate your website with your keyboard. And second of all, you understand what you have to do to make it easy to navigate. And the rest is more things like that. Try using purely a screen reader to navigate your website. So do not look at it at all, right? Navigate it purely with a screen reader, because that's what some people are going to have to do. And again, this will help you with testing, and it will help you with practice as well. So yeah, those kinds of things. Okay, so now with those out of the way, we come into some resources. And by the way, the things we talked about before, both semantic HTML and how to practice and test the accessibility of a website, these resources will help you with, because they come hand in hand. So these are the learning resources. So what I like to do, and you don't have to do this, all of these steps are optional, right? I'm going to give you some resources of different tiers, and you can pick which ones you like. But I always like starting with some introductory video courses myself. Okay, so at the moment in Programming Duck, we don't have our own courses. So in the absence of that, I can recommend these two very highly. So the Front-End Masters course called Website Accessibility by John Cooperman, and the front-end master's course called Accessibility in JavaScript Applications by Marcy Sutton. I've seen both of them actually as my introductions to accessibility. I recommend them both very highly. They're very good, pretty thorough, still introductory, I would say. But in all honesty, these are 2 to 4 hour courses or whatever, I don't remember. But if you do this, in my experience, you know more about accessibility than most other developers out there. Because accessibility isn't something that most people care about. These 2 courses alone, or even just one of them, will take you quite far in your knowledge. So the next kind of resource that I would recommend, and again, you can skip the previous ones if you like, or you can skip these ones or do whatever you want. But I would recommend the MDN pages on accessibility. And also, alternatively, the web.dev pages on accessibility. So they're basically pages with a ton of tutorials in there that, in my opinion, are more thorough than the previous courses. So if you want something more thorough than those, then please feel free to check these out. So for example, the MDN tutorials on that, and I think this one is the more thorough resource of the 2. It covers things like semantic HTML, different disabilities and assistive technologies, and I think it's very important for you to understand those, creating custom widgets, WAI-ARIA, and just a lot more that it's not worth going through now. You can see it in your own time. So yeah, I highly recommend those. The next resource is the WebAIM articles. So that's the website called webaim.org, I believe it was. I have links for all of these in the slides. I think this one is the most thorough resource that we've seen so far. So it says a lot about accessibility. So it's great for understanding a lot about the motivation for accessibility. It talks thoroughly about different kinds of disabilities and how those people use websites. And overall, it teaches you accessibility very thoroughly. And it also has long pages, detailed pages on specific topics on accessibility that I haven't seen anywhere else. Overall, I highly recommend this resource. I think it's one of the best, great all around. So if you want a really thorough resource, I think try going for this one. The only thing with this one is that it doesn't have a lot of code examples, at least not as much as MDN and web.dev. So if you're not comfortable with HTML and JavaScript on its own yet, then maybe you would prefer some of the previous resources. But if you can easily translate concepts into code, then I think this is a great resource for you. And of course, these resources only cover my experience. I've actually done every single one of these, and I can tell you about them. But I haven't done many others. So there might be many amazing resources that I'm missing that I can't tell you about. So if you have another resource that you would like to learn from, no problem. Absolutely. Please go and learn from that. And also, if there are any other resources that you think would be useful, then please leave a comment as well. I'm sure everyone would like to know about them too. Okay, so that covers your fundamental learning about accessibility. But there is more. Unfortunately, there is always more to learn. And some of the things that I need to point out specifically are the following: accessibility statements and WAI-ARIA. So accessibility statements are something that may be required by law in your country. For example, I know the United Kingdom requires your website to have an accessibility statement, at least to my current understanding. And even if they're not required by law in your country, then it's still good to know about them. WCAG mentions that there are many good reasons to have an accessibility statement. So yeah, that's something specific that the other resources that I've talked about so far don't cover in too much detail, in my opinion. You'll have to look at that specifically. And the next thing is WAI-ARIA, which are basically attributes that you add to HTML, which add information for screen readers, basically. So some of the previous resources cover some of the basics of WAI-ARIA, but at least in my opinion, it wasn't enough. There is much more to be learned about WAI-ARIA. So, WAI-ARIA has many documents, but the one that I believe would be best for you to look at, the one that's intended for developers rather than other things, is the WAI-ARIA authoring practices document. Okay, and that provides explanations and recommendations on how to apply ARIA correctly for a lot of things. So the primary things that I recommend that you do for that page is the following. First of all, use it primarily as a reference. You don't need to scan, you don't need to read every single word from top to bottom. It can be like an MDN reference where when you need something in a particular element, you open up the MDN page and you read about it. So use it primarily as that. Even so, you need to know the basic things of what it talks about. So I would recommend that you read the introductory section because it talks about WAI-ARIA in general, pretty good. Secondly, read about some of the design patterns and the widgets. You don't need to read all of them, but this is one of the main reasons that you must use WAI-ARIA for. When you're working on a custom widget, you must use WAI-ARIA to make sure your website is accessible. Okay, so read a few of those so that you know what to expect when you're working on a widget like that. And for the rest, I think you can just scan through it. Go through a few of the headings, maybe read a paragraph here and there. But yeah, those are the important bits. So that would be my recommendation. Okay, so after you've done all that, and if you feel very comfortable with your accessibility knowledge, and you want to learn more, what can you do? There are a few things. Primarily, I would recommend following accessibility experts. For example, their Twitter or their blog or whatever it is, and read what they write, because they are the ones that are doing the latest research on accessibility, are thinking about this stuff a lot day to day, and that may create new techniques that may be incorporated in the official specifications tomorrow. So yeah, follow the experts for the latest research and the latest knowledge on this topic. Another thing that you can do is look at the official WCAG documents. Okay, so that includes the official specification, a large list of accessibility techniques, and the document Understanding WCAG. And if you really want to learn all that you can about accessibility, it might be worth looking at that. And finally, as with pretty much anything, when you need to know more about a particular topic on accessibility, just do a search engine search, right? So you need to know about topic X, search it on some search engine, and read some articles or whatever. So, fairly common stuff. I'm sure you've done this many times already. Okay, so that's it for the learning resources. The last part of this video is going to be on a learning plan. We talked about a lot of learning resources. What do you do? So to start with, obviously, you can do whatever you want. But here are just a few recommendations from me if you're interested. So firstly, if you want a good introduction to the topic, a nice, easy-paced introduction that's going to be very nice to learn from, I recommend looking at one of the video courses. At least I personally love learning from video. I find it really easy. I love seeing the instructor going through examples themselves rather than me having to imagine them in my head and whatever. So yeah, video course is really good. And as already mentioned, if you do these, you'll be much further ahead than most other developers on accessibility. But next, if you don't like introductory courses, no problem, right? Just skip them. And you can go to one of the more thorough resources if that's what you would prefer. So the next level up, in my opinion, would be the MDN resources. They're pretty thorough, right? And again, if you want an even more thorough resource, you have the WebAIM articles. So you can take things how you like. Nice introduction, do the videos, or skip them. Pretty thorough, do MDN, or skip it. Super thorough, go for WebAIM. So me personally, I did all of those. And I think if I was going to go back, now that I know what resources I like, I would probably do the video courses because I love learning from video. They're great introductions. And I would also do the WebAIM resource as well. I would go for a small introduction and then, okay, let's get proper into it. But if I wanted something in between, it might be small introduction and then MDN for a little bit more thorough, leave WebAIM for some time in the future. Something like that. So it's up to you and do what works best for you. All right, so that's it for this video. This one was a much longer video, but I hope you found it useful and I hope it helps you. If you liked the video, then please click that like button. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, then please subscribe. It really helps a ton when you do those things. And as always, if you have any comments or any counter arguments or any suggestions or any resources that we missed, then please leave a comment below. All right, thanks very much and see you next time.